Well, this will actually be my first time judging the British Home Awards, but I think it's all about maybe having an open mind, a strong framework, and I suppose the sort of create space for thoughtful discussion, because it's obviously not just going to be me, it's going to be with all the other judges as well, and there's going to be lots of expertise in the room. So I think it's about compromise and discussion and sort of reviewing all the projects, bringing our own sort of point of views and our own experience to the table, but giving everyone the confidence to speak up and also to challenge each other so that we can come up with the awards for the best projects. So I think for me, I guess given the work that we at Bell Phillips do, but I think it's more than just about the individual dwelling. Obviously we want beautiful, aspirational individual homes, but I think it's not about the grand designs, single home for the wealthy homeowner. I think it's about how homes create places and how they come together to create communities and are designed in a way that encourages that sort of interaction. So it's not just about the homes themselves, it's about the spaces in between, I think, which are also equally important. And I think Port Loop in Birmingham is like a really good example of that, actually. It's that they basically they're great homes in themselves, but they also have opened up the gardens, which actually encourage children and families to actually interact. And as we know, loneliness is one of the one of the epidemics that we have in terms of health and well-being. So it can actually sort of foster that sense of community and well-being. And it means you don't need to be extremely wealthy to have a huge garden to play in. And actually we did something very, very similar years ago in a project in Thurrock called Bracelet Close, where it was a bracelet of houses formed around a courtyard. And we didn't have fenced off gardens. We actually just opened up that courtyard space, and then children were able to come out and play. And then visiting that finished dwelling, years later, you could see that it was successful by the number of toys that were all sort of just strewn in the courtyards. You could see that it was actually really, really being used, and families really, really valued it. So I think that's what makes a good home, being part of a good place. I suppose it's not just about glossy architecture and big name practices, it's also about how people actually live. So they celebrate innovation, architecture that is thoughtful and attuned to sort of the real pressures and possibilities in the UK. So it's a real human-centred quality that I think gets awarded in the British Home Awards. So I think recently I would actually say Appleby Blue, which is a St Xavier's project done by Bennett, and I think that was up for British Home Awards last year. And I think it's that example of beautiful placemaking, the use of really beautiful natural materials, all focused around this courtyard. And actually through the design and layout of each home, the simple things like putting a bench outside, but pairing front doors and having a bench so that the residents can actually sit out of their home and have a chat. I suppose it's important to note it's a home for the elderly. And I think the proof that it is a really, really successful scheme is actually the outcomes to the people that have moved there. So I remember we saw it at the Housing Design Awards, and there was a lady who normally had been admitted to the Maudsley at least 4 times a year and hasn't been admitted to hospital since she's moved in. So it's that prime example of how not only is it just good design, it's good design, the way that you feel, you've got access to green space. Every time you come out of your home, you can look out onto the fully greened courtyard, but also the way that it sort of creates that sense of community, brings people together. There's other amenity spaces, so that it also sort of tackles that issue of loneliness, which is, as we know, is also really, really bad for your health. So it's that example of where good design can actually really, really benefit health and well-being and outcomes in the long term. So yes, it was a little bit more expensive than a standard scheme, but I would say that money was extremely well spent. So it feels like there's this sort of excitement in the air. So we've got a new government, which is more about building rather than not building. So there's a lot of aspiration and drive to really get spades in the ground and to sort of start building. Obviously it's going to take a while, but does feel like that we are sort of on a tipping point of projects starting to come through and everything sort of speeding up a little bit, hopefully. And I think that's actually really exciting. It's a really exciting opportunity. if we want to build this many homes, this is like a new house building renaissance, and it's an opportunity for us as architects and designers and master planners to really take the opportunity and show that these homes should be the best quality, best design homes that we have, and also be innovative with it as well. So if we all collectively take the opportunity of this house building renaissance and be innovative with it, then actually it could be something we can all be really, really proud of in 50 years time. That's a really interesting question, and maybe I'm going to be more back down to the sort of more single homeowner way of thinking, or bringing it back to the individual dwelling. But I personally, and it's going to be really, really controversial, and everyone will think I'm a little bit weird, but I actually think that nobody should have a fixed TV point. I don't actually have a TV myself because I think it completely kills a space, and you have to point all your furniture towards it, which I think for a living room it ruins it. And I hate having that sort of big black screen on the wall that everything points towards, when actually your chairs should be pointing towards each other so you can actually have a conversation. So it might be controversial, but I think with like the different ways of consuming media now, maybe the fixed TV point is on the way out. I don't know. I think all spaces require love. I think all spaces provide an opportunity to sort of increase volume, play with light, think about how people use that space. So whether it be corridors or lounges or the loo, whatever it is, I think every space requires some form of sort of innovation and consideration. And I suppose the corridor is definitely one that gets ignored a lot, but there are opportunities to create something interesting depending on the dwelling. Well, I suppose again it depends for what reason. So I think Appleby Blue, I think is definitely one, but then also historically, when you study architecture, you experience lots of different fabulous, amazing buildings. So I don't think there can actually be one, because it will stop you in your tracks for different reasons, whether it be a really fabulous public building or a religious space, or just a wonderful master plan which creates really great spaces to interact with. But on a sort of, in my kind of architectural journey, I always found the work of Carlo Scarpa particularly exciting and interesting, because it did make you stop you in your tracks, because not only was it about the spaces and the play with light, but it was also about that the detailing, so the small elements of the design as well, from like a door handle or a step detail or whatever it is. He would just play with materials, like merging of metal with a little bit of wood, all fused into concrete in this really, really beautiful way that you can't walk through a Carlo Scarpa building without going through. You have to go through slowly, because every element requires attention. I mean, his builders must have hated him. The drawing package must have been insane, but I always found just the like levels of excitement from the tiniest detail to also sort of the macro, and I think that's why his work was quite always sort of stuck with me as something that is worth slowing you down in your tracks, I suppose. I think we should not do dream homes. I think make the spaces that are around you the best you can, whether it's a small box room to a town or a city. I think it's stop just dreaming and wait for something to happen. Just act and create the spaces around you the best that they can be.